Bessie's last stand. The engine coughed like a chain smoker trying to quit, then fell silent. Maya pumped the gas pedal, a frantic rhythm against the dusty floor mat of Bessie, her beloved but temperamental '67 Mustang. Nothing. Just the faint ticking of cooling metal and the chirping of crickets in the twilight. "Come on, Bessie, don't do this to me," she pleaded, turning the key again, her voice tight with anxiety. Tonight was the night. Her date with Ethan. The guy who made her stomach do Olympic-level gymnastics. And Bessie, in her infinite wisdom, decided to stage a dramatic revolt. Swallowing her rising panic, Maya grabbed her phone. One bar. Of course. She held it aloft like a divining rod, inching towards the edge of her driveway until the signal flickered to 2. Enough. Ethan answered on the second ring, his voice a smooth baritone that usually sent shivers down her spine. Tonight, it just amplified her frustration. "Hey, Maya. Almost here. I snagged us the best table at the Velvet Room." "Ethan, hi. Listen, there's a slight problem," she said, forcing a cheerful tone that felt utterly fake. "Bessie's being a bit of a diva. She won't start." A pause. Maya could practically hear Ethan's perfect eyebrows furrowing. "Bessie? Seriously? You're driving that thing? She's a classic." Maya retorted, then instantly regretted the defensiveness in her voice. "Look, I might be a little late. I'm trying to figure it out." "Late? Maya, I made reservations. This place is impossible to get into." His voice was edged with irritation. "Maybe you should just call a cab." "A cab?" "Right." Because explaining to a taxi driver why she was dressed to the nines and stranded in her driveway was exactly how she envisioned starting her romantic evening. "I'll see what I can do," she mumbled, and ended the call before he could suggest any more helpful solutions. Defeated, Maya leaned against Bessie's cool metal hood. She knew next to nothing about cars. She could check the fluids, maybe jiggle some wires, but beyond that she was clueless. Glancing at the house next door, a sigh escaped her lips. Arthur Evans, her retired neighbor, was a mechanical whiz. He spent his days tinkering in his garage, resurrecting antique clocks and fixing lawnmowers. He was also Arthur. Kind, a little awkward, and definitely not the kind of guy she usually sought advice from, especially not when dressed in a slinky black dress. But desperate times. She walked across the lawn, the heels of her sandals sinking slightly into the soft grass. Hesitation gnawed at her as she reached his front door. The porch light flickered on, illuminating Arthur's figure through the sheer curtain. He opened the door before she could knock. "Maya. Is everything all right?" His brow was creased with concern. He was wearing his usual uniform, a faded flannel shirt and jeans. "Bessie's not feeling well," she said, gesturing towards the driveway. "I was wondering if you might have a look." She cringed inwardly, hating how pathetic she sounded. Arthur's eyes widened slightly as he took in her attire. A flicker of something that might have been surprise, or maybe even appreciation, crossed his face before he masked it with a familiar, friendly smile. "Bessie, huh? Let's see what we can do." The mechanic next door. Maya hesitated at Arthur's front door, the peeling blue paint a stark contrast to the vibrant yellow of her own house. She smoothed down her sundress, suddenly feeling self-conscious. It was silly, really. He was just Arthur, the quiet, kind neighbor who always offered a smile and a wave. But asking for help felt different. Especially with Bessie, her beloved but temperamental vintage Beetle, wheezing her last mechanical breaths in Maya's driveway. Taking a deep breath, she knocked. The sound echoed through the stillness of the afternoon. A moment later, the door swung open, revealing Arthur in a faded flannel shirt and jeans, his silver hair slightly disheveled. He peered at her through his glasses, a gentle smile spreading across his face. "Maya. What a pleasant surprise. Is everything all right? His voice was warm, a comfortable rumble. Well, that's kind of why I'm here, she admitted, gesturing back towards her house. Bessie's not feeling so great. I think she might be dying. Arthur chuckled, a sound that eased Maya's nerves. Dying, huh? Let's have a look, shall we? He grabbed a well-worn toolbox from inside and followed her back to her driveway, his movements surprisingly spry for his age. He circled Bessie, tapping a tire, peering under the hood. His brow furrowed in concentration. Sounds like the fuel pump to me, he said finally, wiping his hands on a rag. Not a big deal, relatively speaking. We can probably get her purring again in a few hours. Maya's shoulders sagged with relief. Really? You can fix it. I can certainly try, he said with a wink. Haven't tinkered with a bug in a while, but the basics are the same. Besides, he added, a twinkle in his eye, it gives me an excuse to get out of the house. He set to work immediately, the toolbox his domain. Maya watched, fascinated, as he moved with a confident precision, his hands calloused but gentle. He explained each step as he went, pointing out the different parts, describing their function. Fuel lines, carburetors, distributors. It was a language Maya didn't speak, but Arthur made it sound almost poetic. The air filled with the scent of oil and gasoline, a strange but not unpleasant aroma. Arthur hummed a tuneless melody as he worked, his face etched with concentration. He seemed completely absorbed, lost in the mechanical puzzle before him. Maya found herself watching him more than the car, noticing the way the afternoon sunlight caught the silver in his hair, the way his brow furrowed when he encountered a particularly stubborn bolt, the way his lips pursed in concentration. He was surprisingly captivating. After a while he paused, wiping his brow with the back of his hand. All right, he said, a grin spreading across his face, let's see if this old girl wants to sing. He turned the key. The engine sputtered, coughed, and then, with a roar, sprang to life. Bessie was alive. Maya clapped her hands, a wave of exhilaration washing over her. You did it. You actually did it. Arthur beamed, clearly pleased with himself. Just a little TLC, he said, patting the hood of the car. And a new fuel pump, of course. Sparks and wrenches. The garage smelled of oil, metal, and something vaguely sweet, like old rubber. Sunlight streamed through the open door, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Maya wiped a smudge of grease from her cheek, leaving a dark streak. This is a nightmare, she muttered, wrestling with a rusted bolt on the Mustang's sputtering engine. Arthur, perched on a stool beside her, chuckled. Patience, Maya. These old girls have their secrets. Sometimes you just have to whisper the right words. He handed her a longer wrench. Try this one. And think of it as a puzzle, not a personal affront. She took the wrench, the cool metal a small comfort against her frustration. Easy for you to say. You probably speak fluent internal combustion. Not fluent, Arthur admitted, a faint smile playing on his lips. But I've had a few conversations. My first car was a '67 Beetle. Total rust bucket, but I loved her. Learned everything I know taking her apart, and putting her back together, usually in the wrong order. Maya paused, surprised. A '67 Beetle. That's unexpected. She'd pictured him driving something sensible, a beige sedan perhaps. Unexpected good or unexpected bad, he teased, his eyes twinkling. Unexpected, intriguing, she conceded. She applied pressure to the wrench. It held. Did you ever fix it up? Eventually. After setting fire to the distributor cap twice. He chuckled, a low rumble in his chest. Those were the days. I even tried to soup it up with a custom paint job. Let's just say my artistic vision didn't quite match reality. It ended up looking like a Jackson Pollock painting gone wrong. Maya laughed, the sound echoing in the garage. She'd never imagined Arthur having a rebellious, experimental streak. She leaned into the engine again, the wrench finally biting. With a groan, the bolt surrendered. Yes, she exclaimed, triumphant. See? You just needed the right vocabulary. Arthur winked. Buoyed by her small victory, Maya felt a surge of renewed energy. Okay, next up, the fuel filter. I think that's the culprit. They worked in companionable silence for a while, the clink of metal on metal the only sound. Arthur patiently guided her, explaining the function of each component, his voice calm and reassuring. She found herself not only understanding the mechanics better but also him. He wasn't just a quiet, older neighbor. He was funny, insightful, and surprisingly adventurous, at least in his youth. Then, another bolt, even more stubborn than the first. This one refused to budge, no matter how much force Maya applied. Ugh! This is impossible, she cried, throwing the wrench down in exasperation. Arthur picked it up, examining the bolt. This one's really seized. Let me try something. He sprayed it with penetrating oil. Sometimes, a little lubrication and persuasion are all you need. He positioned the wrench, applying slow, steady pressure. The bolt remained stubbornly fixed. This is ridiculous, Maya said, feeling her frustration bubbling up again. Why does it have to be so difficult? Arthur straightened up, wiping his hands on a rag. Life's like that sometimes, Maya. You think you're doing everything right, but things just don't cooperate. You just have to keep at it. Find a different angle. Maybe try a little heat. He gestured towards a small propane torch. Want to give it a shot? Maya hesitated, then nodded. Okay. But if I set the car on fire, you're buying me a new one. Deal, Arthur said, his eyes crinkling at the corners. But I think we can avoid that. Just a little heat, be patient. We'll get this. Unexpected compliments. The slick wrench betrayed Maya's grip. Damn it, she muttered, scrubbing her palm against her denim. A low chuckle, a resonant rumble, escaped Arthur as he observed from beneath the raised hood. They say necessity is the mother of invention. Though perhaps a firmer hold would be a more immediate parent. He extended a square of clean shop cloth. Accepting it, Maya's lips curved faintly. Thanks. I am convinced this engine is actively sabotaging me. Engines are just intricate puzzles, Arthur countered, his eyes bright with amusement. And you strike me as someone who relishes a challenge. I'm impressed by your grit, jumping right into the thick of it. A flush warmed Maya's neck. I can't stand feeling inept. Ethan's solution would have been a call for a tow, or worse, a condescending lecture while he fixed it himself. Arthur's brow knit subtly. Ethan doesn't value your ingenuity, then. Maya tossed the rag onto the fender with a shrug. Ethan values. Ethan. He likes that I'm decorative and laugh at his jokes. The words came out sharper than intended, a sting she immediately regretted. Well, I appreciate your willingness to get your hands dirty, Arthur offered softly, his gaze steady. And your sharp mind. You pinpointed the issue faster than most seasoned pros. Maya stared, surprised. Ethan had never remarked on, or perhaps never even noticed, her knack for problem-solving or her mechanical inclination. Compliments were reserved for her hair, her outfits, her smile, superficial observations. Arthur's simple, heartfelt words struck a deeper chord. He seemed to perceive something more profound, a quality she'd barely acknowledged in herself. Really, she breathed, almost inaudibly. Arthur affirmed with a nod. Absolutely. Most would balk at a fuel injector problem. You, however, pounced on it with the tenacity of a badger facing a cobra. Maya's laugh bubbled up, lighter and more genuine than she'd felt in ages. A badger versus a cobra. That's a new analogy. They're persistent little devils, Arthur elaborated, a subtle smile gracing his lips. And remarkably effective at achieving their goals. He retrieved a nearby socket wrench. Now, where were we? Ah, yes. Fuel injectors. Let's get this determined woman back on the road, shall we? As they labored together, side by side, a wave of warmth bloomed in Maya's chest. It wasn't solely the engine's radiating heat. It was something novel, ignited by Arthur's perceptive comments and authentic regard. A feeling she couldn't yet define, but one that resonated profoundly. Rainy day confessions. The wrench slipped in Maya's hand, clanging against the engine block. Damn it. She sucked on her stinging knuckles, glaring at the stubborn bolt. Having trouble? Arthur asked, his voice laced with amusement. He peered over her shoulder, the scent of motor oil and his familiar aftershave filling her nostrils. Just peachy, Maya grumbled. This thing is tighter than a drum. Suddenly, fat raindrops began to splatter on the driveway, darkening the asphalt. Maya looked up, surprised. Seriously? Now? Arthur glanced at the sky, a frown etching itself onto his face. Looks like we're in for a downpour. Let's get under the hood. They squeezed together, huddling beneath the raised hood of Maya's ancient Corolla. The rain intensified, drumming a frantic rhythm on the metal above them. The air grew thick with the smell of wet earth and ozone. Maya could feel the warmth radiating from Arthur's arm, pressed against hers. Think it'll pass quickly, she asked, trying to sound casual. Arthur shrugged, his shoulder brushing against her. Hard to say. Could be one of those summer deluges that lasts for hours. The rain came down in sheets, blurring the edges of the world. Maya found herself staring at the small patch of Arthur's flannel shirt visible at his collar, the soft fabric seeming impossibly inviting. She shifted slightly, trying to create more space between them, but the cramped confines of the engine bay offered little room to maneuver. So, Arthur began, his voice a little louder to be heard over the rain. About that fuel injector. He launched into a detailed explanation of the engine's fuel system, his voice a low rumble that vibrated against Maya's ear. She tried to focus on his words, on the technical intricacies he was describing, but her mind kept drifting. The rain, the closeness, the scent of him, it was all conspiring to create a potent cocktail of nervous energy. He paused, his gaze meeting hers. You following me? Maya swallowed, her throat suddenly dry. Yeah. Fuel. Injection. Got it. She definitely did not got it. Arthur's lips twitched in a barely perceptible smile. Right. He reached out, his hand hovering near her face. You've got a smudge of grease right here. His fingers brushed against her cheek, sending a jolt of electricity through her. Maya's breath hitched. The world seemed to shrink, the only reality the feel of his skin against hers, the sound of the rain, the rapid thumping of her heart. He lingered there for a fraction of a second longer than necessary, his eyes searching hers. There, he said softly, his voice barely audible above the storm. All clean. He withdrew his hand, and Maya felt a sudden, inexplicable sense of loss. The rain continued to fall, washing the world clean, but leaving the air between them thick with unspoken words and a tension that felt almost unbearable. The impulsive hug. The engine coughed a pathetic, rattling wheeze that made Maya groan. Arthur, elbow-deep in the engine compartment, straightened and wiped a smear of grease across his forehead, leaving a dark streak that only intensified the crinkles around his eyes. Almost there, he said, his voice muffled by the hood. Just a little adjustment to the fuel injector. Maya bounced on the balls of her feet, anxiety a tight knot in her stomach. The setting sun painted the dusty driveway in long, orange shadows. She needed this car. Needed it for the internship, needed it to feel like she wasn't completely stuck. You sure? It sounded pretty bad. Arthur chuckled, a low, rumbling sound. Trust me, Maya. I've heard worse. This old girl just needs a little coaxing. He disappeared back into the engine's depths. The metallic tang of gasoline hung heavy in the air, mixing with the sweet scent of honeysuckle from the overgrown vines clinging to Arthur's porch. Silence stretched, punctuated only by the clink of metal on metal and Maya's own ragged breathing. She watched Arthur's movements, the sure, deliberate way he handled the tools, the focused concentration etched on his face. He seemed so capable, so grounded. Everything she wasn't. Then, a sharp click, followed by a whirring sound. Arthur emerged, his face alight with a triumphant grin. All right, let's see if this old beast still has some life in her. He slid into the driver's seat, turned the key, and the engine roared to life. Not a smooth, purring roar but a loud, defiant bellow that shook the entire car. Maya gasped, clapping her hands over her mouth. You did it, she yelled, relief washing over her in a dizzying wave. She felt an overwhelming surge of gratitude, stronger than anything she'd anticipated. He'd actually done it. Arthur had fixed her car. Without thinking, propelled by pure, unadulterated joy, she lunged forward and wrapped her arms around him. It was a brief, clumsy hug, her cheek pressed against the rough fabric of his work shirt. He stiffened for a moment, surprised, then his own arms came up, hesitantly circling her back. The scent of motor oil and something uniquely Arthur piped tobacco and Old Spice filled her senses. The engine idled loudly, a roaring, throbbing heartbeat in the suddenly silent space between them. She pulled back, her face flushed. Oh, I'm sorry, she stammered, mortified by her impulsiveness. Thank you. So much. Arthur cleared his throat, his face mirroring her own embarrassment. He looked away, focusing on the dashboard. No problem, Maya. Glad I could help. He kept his gaze fixed ahead as he switched off the ignition. The sudden silence was deafening. He slowly turned to look at her. You should probably get going. It's getting late. Maya nodded, her heart hammering against her ribs. She scrambled out of the car, avoiding his gaze. Right. Late. Thanks again, Arthur. She backed away, a tangle of apologies and unspoken feelings caught in her throat. As she turned to leave, she glanced back. Arthur was still sitting in the driver's seat, staring straight ahead, his expression unreadable. The orange light of the setting sun cast long shadows across his face, highlighting the lines etched by time and what? Regret? Or something else entirely? Distracted date. Ethan's cherry-red convertible screeched to a halt outside Maya's apartment building, the bass from the stereo vibrating through her window. She plastered on a smile, grabbed her purse, and mentally rehearsed the list of conversation topics she'd prepared. Ethan was a catch, successful, good-looking, and genuinely interested in her. What wasn't to like? He was already out of the car, flashing a toothpaste commercial grin. Ready for the best Italian food this side of the Hudson. Absolutely, Maya chirped, sliding into the passenger seat. The scent of new leather and expensive cologne filled her nostrils. She made a conscious effort to focus on Ethan's booming laughter as he navigated through the city streets, recounting a deal he'd closed that day. Halfway through her linguine alle vongole, however, Arthur's face swam into her mind. She saw him squinting in the afternoon sun, a smudge of grease on his cheek as he tightened a bolt on her engine. She remembered the quiet satisfaction in his voice when he'd finally gotten it running, the way his calloused hand had brushed against hers as he passed her a wrench. And then I told them, look, this isn't charity, this is business. Ethan was saying, punctuating his story with a dramatic flourish of his fork. Maya nodded, trying to appear engaged. Right, business, she echoed, the word feeling hollow on her tongue. She wondered what Arthur was doing now. Probably reading, surrounded by stacks of dusty books, a half-empty mug of tea at his elbow. She pictured the soft glow of his lamp, illuminating the lines around his eyes as he lost himself in another world. A world that, strangely, she suddenly longed to be a part of. Earth to Maya. Ethan snapped his fingers in front of her face. You okay? You seem miles away. Sorry, she mumbled, flushing. Just thinking about something at work. A pathetic lie. Ethan, ever the charmer, didn't press. He launched into another anecdote, this one involving a yacht and a celebrity sighting. Maya picked at her pasta, the once appetizing dish now tasting bland and uninspired. The restaurant's lively chatter faded into a dull hum, replaced by the echo of Arthur's thoughtful silence. She realized she hadn't heard Arthur's booming laughter, his loud stories. Instead, she remembered the intentness of his gaze, the way he listened, truly listened, to what she had to say. Dessert arrived, a towering tiramisu that Ethan devoured with gusto. Maya barely touched hers. The truth, cold and unwelcome, settled in her stomach like lead. She wasn't interested in Ethan. Not really. He was everything she thought she wanted: successful, attractive, exciting. But he wasn't Arthur. And right now, that made all the difference. Honest conversation. The scent of motor oil still clung to Maya's jeans as she walked up Arthur's driveway, a bakery box tucked under her arm. She'd chosen an assortment of pastries, hoping the gesture felt substantial without being overbearing. He'd practically rebuilt her engine, after all. He was in the garden, trowel in hand, wrestling with a stubborn weed. Maya. This is a surprise. He straightened, a faint smudge of dirt on his cheek. Come to admire my petunias. And to deliver these, she said, holding up the box. A small token of my immense gratitude. The car's running like a dream. He accepted the box, a smile crinkling the corners of his eyes. You shouldn't have. But I won't refuse a good pain au chocolate. He led her to the porch swing. The late afternoon sun warmed her face as they sat, a comfortable silence settling between them. Maya took a deep breath. About that hug. Arthur chuckled, a low rumble in his chest. Yes, that. He looked away, towards the rose bushes lining the fence. It was unnecessary. Unnecessary, but... Maya trailed off, searching for the right words. Not unwelcome. He turned back, his gaze meeting hers. Maya, you're a bright, beautiful woman. Any man would be flattered by your attention. But, she prompted softly. He sighed. But I'm old enough to be your father. This spark between us, it's inappropriate. He gestured vaguely. I'm flattered, truly, but it needs to stop here. You deserve someone your own age, someone who can offer you the experiences you should be having. Her stomach clenched. Maybe I don't want someone my own age. Maybe I want someone who's seen a bit of the world, someone who knows what they want. She shifted on the swing, the wicker creaking under her weight. I'm not stupid, Arthur. I know this is unconventional. But I felt something real. Did you feel nothing? He ran a hand through his thinning hair. Of course, I felt something. You're vibrant, intelligent, and refreshingly honest. But feelings aren't always enough. There are practicalities, societal expectations. Screw societal expectations. Maya burst out, immediately regretting her outburst. She lowered her voice. I'm not saying let's run off and get married. I'm just saying, let's not dismiss it out of hand. Let's see where it goes. Arthur shook his head slowly. It won't work, Maya. Eventually, you'll resent me. You'll want things I can't give you. And what if I don't? She challenged, leaning closer. What if I know what I want right now? The air crackled between them, thick with unspoken desires and the weight of his reservations. The scent of roses and cut grass mingled, a bittersweet perfume of possibility. Taking things slow. So what now? Maya asked, kicking a pebble across Arthur's meticulously swept driveway. The setting sun painted the sky in hues of orange and violet, softening the edges of the world. Arthur sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. Now we acknowledge the elephant and try to figure out how to politely usher it out of the room. Maya laughed, the sound echoing in the quiet suburban evening. Politely. Arthur, who are we trying to appease? The nosy Mrs. Henderson across the street. Or your book club? He winced. Both, perhaps. And Carolyn. Carolyn's moved on, Arthur. She wants you to be happy. Maya stepped closer, her green eyes locking onto his. And you deserve to be. We both do. He met her gaze, a flicker of something akin to hope in his eyes. It's just unusual, Maya. People will talk. Let them talk, she retorted, a defiant spark in her voice. We're not hurting anyone. Besides, she added with a playful nudge, isn't a little scandal good for the soul? Arthur chuckled, the sound lighter than Maya had heard in weeks. I'm drawn to your spirit, Maya. Your fearlessness. And your intelligence, of course. You have a way of looking at the world that's so refreshing. Maya's heart skipped a beat. So, are you saying? I'm saying, Arthur replied, a slow smile spreading across his face, that maybe, just maybe, we shouldn't let Mrs. Henderson dictate our lives. But he quickly added, we take things slow. Very slow. No grand pronouncements, no rushing into anything. We explore this connection cautiously. Cautiously, Maya repeated, testing the word on her tongue. I can do cautiously. Though, secretly, her mind was already racing. Just then, a familiar car pulled into Arthur's driveway. It was Carolyn's sensible sedan. Maya felt a sudden pang of something she couldn't quite identify: guilt. Resentment. Carolyn emerged from the car, a small, wrapped package in her hands. She looked tired, but her eyes were kind. Arthur, I brought over some of your favorite shortbread. I know you haven't been sleeping well. She paused, her gaze shifting to Maya. A flicker of surprise crossed her face, quickly replaced by a polite, almost curious, smile. Hello, Maya. I didn't realize you were visiting. Just leaving, Maya said quickly, backing away slightly. It was nice seeing you, Carolyn. Arthur. She offered a small wave and hurried toward her own car, the weight of the evening settling heavily on her shoulders. Cautiously, indeed.